Why did ancient civilizations worship the stars? 1. The first temple was the sky, the human awakening to the night, from survival to meaning. Why the heavens became sacred. 2. Egypt and the royal road to the stars. Pyramids, star alignments, ritual calendars, and the journey of the royal soul. 3. Mesopotamia and the laws written in light. Ziggurats as stairways, priest astronomers, omens, and the birth of recorded sky watching. 4. The Americas and the engine of time. Maya and Mexica time systems, equinox temples, and cities built as stellar instruments. 5. Africa beyond the Nile. Stone circles, oral cosmologies, and debated knowledge about Sirius and seasonal stars. 6. India and China see the heavens as order. Star maps, lunar mansions, imperial observatories, and the marriage of fate and measurement. 7. The sky as clock, compass, and code. Navigation, agriculture, medicine wheels, stone monuments, and living calendars. 8. When the sky went wrong. Eclipses, comets, drought cycles, and how cosmic fear reshaped politics and belief. 9. The lasting mirror. What the ancient gaze still does to us today, and why we keep looking up. Chapter 1. The first temple was the sky. Before there were walls or words, there were stars. The first stories were not written with ink. They were written with light. Our ancestors stood in the dark, eyes lifted and felt a pull. Above them was movement that did not belong to the beast or the hunt. Above them was pattern. People noticed that the sun returned each morning, that the moon grew fat and then grew thin, that some lights wandered against the background of others, that the year breathed in and out with rain and heat and cold. The heavens seemed to beat like a heart. The heavens seemed to speak. In the world of hunger and fear, pattern was comfort. Pattern meant a chance to predict. Prediction meant a chance to survive. If the night held reliable signs, then the night held wisdom. If the night held wisdom, then the night was holy. Long before vast cities, people set stones to catch the light at important times. The first architects were patient. They watched where the sun stood at the longest day. They marked where the sun fell at the shortest day. They learned where the moon kissed the mountains at certain times in its long dance. A circle of rocks became a calendar. A row of pillars became a promise that the light would return. The sky was not only philosophy. It was food and family. Stars help people know when to plant, when to move herds, when to prepare for flood or frost. The moon became a measure for seed and for birth. To miss the rhythm was to risk the year. To keep the rhythm was to live. Sometimes the sky broke its own rules. A sudden star flared. The sun vanished at midday. The moon turned red. The familiar order shook. In that shock grew awe. In that awe grew worship. If the sky could give and take, then the sky had will. If it had will, it was alive. If it was alive, it could be pleased or offended. Ritual was born. Worship was a conversation with power. People spoke with the rising sun. They spoke with the moon at first quarter. They spoke with the deep river of stars that crossed the night like a road for spirits. They gave thanks. They asked for mercy. They asked for rain. They asked for victory. They asked for a safe return from the hunt. Constellations were a language. To name a pattern was to remember it. To remember it was to teach it. In the naming, people learned the seasons. In the stories, people passed law and morals and memory. The stars became teachers that never slept. For the traveler, the sky was a path. One star did not seem to move. It offered direction when waves and sand and trees were deceiving. People crossed deserts and oceans with eyes on the heavens. Sacred and useful became the same word. As life grew more complex, sky watching grew more precise. People set aside a place for the work. High platforms, courtyards aligned with sunrise on a certain day, pools that reflected the night so that the sky could be read on the surface of still water. The work required patience. The work required memory kept over many lives. The work required a class of people who watched, counted, and interpreted. The first priest astronomers stepped forward. Records changed everything. A single night could be compared to nights from long ago. A cycle could be seen. A cycle could be predicted. A prediction could be declared. The moment prediction arrived, power gathered around the interpreter. If you could tell a king when the river would rise, you were valuable. If you could warn a city that the sun would darken and then return, you were feared and trusted. Still, behind power and craft, a simpler feeling endured. The sky was beautiful. Beauty alone can make a temple. Beauty alone can teach silence. People saw the night and felt small. People saw the night and felt connected. People saw the night and felt that life was threaded to a larger pattern. In that reach there is the seed of every temple and calendar and tale. In that reach is the first prayer. The night could not be owned. The night could not be shaped like clay. Yet the night could be known. To know it was to find a place in it. To find a place in it was to find meaning. The first temple was the sky because the sky did what temples do. It gathered people. It marked sacred time. It revealed a pattern that seemed wiser than any single person. It promised that even in the face of death and storm and loss, there was order that endured. From this temple, the rest will rise. Stone will imitate the stars. Power will take on the language of constellations. And the story of civilizations will be written by the light they followed. Chapter 2: Egypt and the Royal Road to the Stars. The golden sun rises over the desert. Heat shimmers above the sand. A single pyramid cuts through the morning fog. Monolithic, still, eternal. In Egypt, the stars were not merely distant lights. They were the throne room of gods, a map of eternity, a mirror of the divine. The Nile rose and fell. Kings were born and buried. But above it all, the sky remained, marking each age, each life, each death. The ancient Egyptians were not guessing. They were measuring. The layout of Giza wasn't random. It was celestial. The three great pyramids are believed to align with the three stars in Orion's belt, the celestial symbol of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Why Orion? Because Osiris ruled the realm of the dead. Because to the Egyptians, death was not an end. It was a journey through the stars. They believed that after death, the pharaoh's soul would ascend, sailing through the Duat, the underworld, toward the imperishable stars of the north. Immortality was up, not under the earth, but up. Egyptian priests were also astronomers. Each night, they studied the movement of the sky. They knew which stars rose at what times. They tracked Venus, Jupiter, and Sirius, the brightest of all. The rising of Sirius wasn't just beautiful. It was critical. It predicted the annual flooding of the Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt. When Sirius appeared on the eastern horizon just before dawn, it meant the river would swell. Crops would grow. The people would eat. And so, Sirius became sacred, embodied in the goddess Sopdet. The Egyptian year was 365 days, not because of whim, but because the stars dictated it. Their calendar evolved from sky watching. Their temples were observatories. Their faith was timed to the cosmos. At Karnak, the axis of the temple aligns with the winter solstice sunrise. One day a year, light fills the corridor perfectly, bathing the inner sanctum in gold. That one moment was a communion between heaven and earth. When a pharaoh died, his tomb became a vessel for travel. The walls weren't just decorative, they were maps, star charts, guides for the soul. The Book of the Dead was filled with instructions on how to navigate the celestial realms. Nut, the sky goddess, swallowed the sun each night, giving birth to it again every morning. She held the stars within her. To sleep under the stars was to sleep in the arms of a goddess. But it wasn't just pharaohs. Even if farmers and fishermen watched the heavens. The moon told them when to sow. The stars told them when to harvest. To live in Egypt was to live by the rhythm of the sky. Priesthood was knowledge, and knowledge of the stars meant power. If you could predict the river, you held the favor of the gods. If you could measure the sun's journey, you controlled time. No one knows exactly how these structures were built with such precision. But we do know this. They weren't just tombs. They were stairways, instruments of transformation. The pharaoh didn't die. He became a star. And so, every life, every offering, every ritual was directed upward. The stars were not simply admired. They were trusted. They were prayed to. They were obeyed. Egyptian civilization lasted over 3,000 years. Kingdoms rose and fell. Dynasties changed. Invaders came and went. But through it all, the stars remained. And Egypt kept watching. To us, they're monuments. To the ancients, they were mirrors of heaven. The pyramid was not the grave of a man. It was a machine for eternity, built to catch the stars and hold them still. Chapter 3: Mesopotamia and the Laws Written in Light. Dust blows across a wide plain. In the distance, massive step towers rise, ziggurats, like ancient staircases leading nowhere, or perhaps to the sky. Long before the world knew pyramids, long before Greece or Rome were etched into stone, there was Sumer, then Akkad, then Babylon, the land between two rivers, Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. And in that cradle, men watched the stars, not for beauty, not for myth, but for law. In ancient Mesopotamia, the priesthood wasn't only spiritual, it was scientific. Their altars were also observatories. Their sacrifices timed not just to please the gods, but to mark the rhythm of the heavens. Here, man first wrote down what he saw above. They cataloged constellations, tracked the movements of Venus, Jupiter, and Mars, predicted eclipses, named comets. They saw in the stars a language, divine grammar, and they believed that if they read it well enough, they could know the will of the gods. It was called the Enuma Anu Enlil, a massive archive of star omens. If Venus appears in the west before sunrise, then the king will win his war. If the moon is covered on the third night, famine is near. Every flicker of light became a message. Every pattern, a prophecy. Ziggurats weren't just towers, they were stairways to the heavens, platforms to get closer to the stars. Priests performed rituals at the summit, believing the gods might descend, or at least be watching more closely from above. The Mesopotamians invented writing, and one of their first uses of it was to record the sky. For centuries, night after night, they built the first historical archives of astronomy. In Babylon, sky knowledge became political power. The Chaldean astronomers were famed across the ancient world for their calculations. Babylon became a center of cosmic intelligence. Foreign kings sent envoys for advice. Even centuries later, the Greeks, who gave us the word astronomy, looked back to Babylon as their teacher. The Mul, Appin, one of the most advanced astronomical documents of the ancient world, mapped the sky into three paths: the path of Enlil, Anu, and Ea. These weren't just directions. They were divine territories. Each path belonged to a different realm of gods. From these maps came the earliest versions of the zodiac: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio. It wasn't a superstition. It was a calendar, a map for farming, for travel, for governing, a framework for time itself. They invented ways to measure hours before clocks, used water clocks to record planetary positions, knew the cycle of the moon with astonishing accuracy. They built algorithms without algebra. They tracked planets with no telescopes. Their tools were simple. Their minds were not. In Mesopotamia, kings ruled under the sky. A bad omen could shake an entire city. Some rulers abdicated temporarily when eclipses threatened their reign, appointing stand-ins to absorb the curse. Cosmic events were political events. The sky was not symbolic, it was binding. The same civilization that worshipped the stars also built the first written legal system. They saw both law and the heavens as reflections of cosmic order. Injustice on earth could bring imbalance in the skies. Vice versa, morality was not separate from the stars. It was dictated by them. The Assyrians continued the tradition. At the library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, thousands of celestial records were stored: star maps, eclipse warnings, planetary logs. They believed the gods spoke through light, through motion, through pattern. Today, scientists still marvel at their accuracy. They tracked Venus's cycle down to the day. They noted lunar eclipses thousands of years before us. And they did it all with clay, fire, and faith. To the Mesopotamians, the stars weren't suggestions. They were law, not the kind enforced by men, but by the gods themselves. To obey the stars was to live in balance. To ignore them was to invite chaos. Long after their empires crumbled, their records endured. Their stones spoke. Their stars still shine. They taught the world that the night wasn't just dark. It was structured, intelligent, sacred. Chapter 4: The Americas and the Engine of Time. We soar above a dense jungle. Mist hangs over a massive stone city. Chichen Itza. Birds cry in the distance. A stone serpent coils down the side of a temple. In the heart of the Americas, Before Columbus ever crossed the sea, before Europe even knew these lands existed, civilizations rose that mastered the stars in ways both practical and poetic. From the highlands of the Andes to the lowlands of the Yucatan, the sky wasn't just worshipped, it was woven into the very structure of time, space, and survival. The Maya called it the long count, an intricate calendar stretching back to the very beginning of time. For them, the world had ages, cycles of creation and destruction, written not in books, but in stars. Time wasn't a line, it was a wheel, and the stars were the spokes that turned it. The temple of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza wasn't just a structure. It was a solar machine. On the spring and autumn equinox, the afternoon sun casts a serpent-shaped shadow down its staircase. That moment, when shadow and stone unite, was sacred. It told the Maya the gods were still watching. It told them when to plant, when to harvest, when to pray, when to sacrifice. Rulers claimed divine authority based on celestial events. Eclipses and solstices weren't coincidences. They were messages, proof that the heavens had granted favor. Temples weren't just built to be beautiful. They were built to be astronomically exact. While the Greeks saw a bear or a hunter, the Maya saw a turtle, a jaguar, a crocodile. Different stories. Same sky. Their most important constellation, the Dark Rift in the Milky Way. They called it the Xibalba B, the Black Road. To them, it was the entrance to the underworld, a pathway for spirits and gods. To the north, the Aztecs created the sunstone, often mistaken for a calendar. It was more than that. It was a cosmic diagram, a model of time, destruction, rebirth. The Aztecs believed they were living in the fifth age of the world. The previous four had ended in flood, fire, jaguars, and wind. And now, they feared the sun itself might one day refuse to rise again. To keep the sun moving, they offered human hearts, ripped out, still beating. Blood was the fuel of the universe. Sacrifice wasn't cruelty. It was duty. They believed the gods had bled to create humans. Now humans had to bleed to sustain the gods, especially the sun god, Huitzilopochtli, who needed nourishment to rise each dawn. We shift south to the high peaks of the Andes. Stone ruins cling to the clouds. Machu Picchu appears. The Inca, high in the Andes, were no less attuned to the sky. Their capital, Cusco, was designed to mirror the Southern Cross constellation. Their temples, like the Coricancha, were lined with gold to reflect solar light. Every solstice, that light entered at precise angles. Their sacred mountains, Apis, were aligned with astronomical events. Even the placement of fields and terraces echoed celestial design. To the Inca, the sun was Inti, the supreme deity. But the moon, the stars, and even eclipses had divine roles. When a solar eclipse occurred, people fasted, wept, and offered sacrifice. They believed the sky was sick. They had to heal it. The Nazca, a mysterious pre-Incan culture, carved giant figures into the ground. Hummingbirds, monkeys, and spiders only visible from the air. Why? Some believe they were offerings to sky gods. Others think they were astronomical maps. The spider aligns with the constellation Orion. Some lines point directly to the Americas. Sky watching wasn't limited to kings or priests. It belonged to the people. Farmers read the stars like a farmer reads rain clouds. They timed their crops by the moon. Hunters followed the stars across plains and mountains. Even today, indigenous traditions still link time to the cosmos. To the Kogi, the stars are sacred beings. They say the sky is a loom, and the world is woven from light. They still perform rituals aligned with lunar phases and solstices. Their memory stretches back unbroken. Across the Americas, the night sky was never just a backdrop. It was alive. It was speaking. And entire civilizations rose, built, farmed, ruled, and fell by its rhythm. They believed the stars didn't just guide them. They made them. They believed that time itself flowed from the heavens, and that to be human was to follow the stars as faithfully as the sun follows its path. Chapter 5, Africa Beyond the Nile. Not a single structure in sight, until it comes upon a circle of stones, partially buried, eerily precise. The site is Nabta Playa, southern Egypt, predating Stonehenge by over 1,000 years. When people speak of ancient African astronomy, they often stop at Egypt, the Nile, the pyramids, the temples of Karnak. But that is not the whole story. Africa has more to say. Beyond the Nile, in the dry silence of deserts, in the oral songs of elders, in stones left behind by forgotten hands, lies a different kind of sky worship, older, earthier, deeply woven into land and blood. Nabta Playa was once a seasonal lake, visited by nomads more than 7,000 years ago. Long before Egypt became a kingdom, people gathered here, and they watched the stars. These stones were not scattered randomly. They aligned with the summer solstice sunrise and with the star Sirius, the same star that later guided Egyptian agricultural cycles. But here, the watching began. In many African cultures, knowledge is not written, it is sung, passed down across generations not on paper, but in melody, movement, memory. And in these songs are star maps, calendars, warnings, blessings. The Dogon are one of the most studied and most controversial examples of African sky knowledge. For centuries, their oral traditions included stories of a star called Ptolo. They described it as small, incredibly heavy, and part of a system with a larger visible star, Sirius. They said this invisible companion orbited in 50-year cycles. Here's the mystery. Western science only confirmed the existence of Sirius B in the 1970s. How did the Dogon know? Skeptics argue the information may have been passed to them by French anthropologists. Others suggest the Dogon held fragments of ancient astronomical knowledge far older than we can trace. Dogon mythology doesn't just mention Sirius. It tells of amphibious sky beings, the Namo, who descended from the heavens and brought knowledge. These aren't just stories. They're encoded systems of ethics, farming, weather, and ritual, anchored in celestial movements. The Nok were one of West Africa's earliest known civilizations, flourishing around 1000 BC. While little written record remains, some archaeologists suggest their ceremonial spaces were oriented toward cardinal points and solstice sunrises, echoing other ancient sky-watching cultures. Great Zimbabwe, the seat of an empire that once controlled vast trade routes, has long puzzled historians. Its construction lacks mortar, but not intelligence. Several walls, towers, and passageways are aligned with solar and lunar movements. Among them, the so-called sun altar, thought to catch the morning light at key times in the year. In West Africa, the Yoruba, the Ashanti, and the Akan all used lunar calendars to structure festivals, royal coronations, market days, and fertility rituals. In many cases, their deities themselves were linked to celestial forces. Orunmila, the god of wisdom, was associated with the stars. Yemoja, mother of waters, with the moon and tides. The practical and the sacred were not separate. The moon was a clock. The stars were a schedule, but also a voice. They told stories of ancestors who became stars, of spirits who traveled along the Milky Way. In some tribes, death ceremonies were timed by constellations to help the soul navigate the cosmic road. Even today, sky rituals persist. Some elders still observe the first appearance of certain stars to predict the coming rains. The Pleiades, in particular, are used across multiple regions, known by dozens of names, all signaling the beginning of life, the turning of seasons. Africa's sky stories are not just ancient. They're living, and they remind us of a deeper truth, that star worship didn't always require pyramids or stone calendars. Sometimes it required only memory, only breath, only the long gaze upward on a silent night. The deeper we dig, the more we find. Africa held sophisticated sky knowledge that predates and parallels that of other great civilizations. And while much of it has been erased or ignored, it still hums in the background of ritual, song, farming, and philosophy, still encoded in stars that rise and fall over the continent every single night. Chapter 6. India and China see the heavens as order. A full moon rises over the sacred Ganges. Its reflection ripples in the water as a temple bell chimes. Thousands of lamps float downriver. Far to the east, atop a misty mountain, an ancient Chinese observatory watches the same moon begin its journey. Across the vast landscapes of Asia, civilizations were watching the heavens long before many parts of the world learned to build with stone. But their gaze was not toward worship in the Western sense. It was toward understanding, balance, harmony, order. In both India and China, the stars weren't just beautiful. They were necessary. They were the blueprint of time, ethics, fate, and governance. In ancient India, the Vedas, some of humanity's oldest scriptures, described the universe as a vast rhythm, a cosmic order called RTA. The stars, the sun, the moon, all followed this rhythm. And if you aligned your life with it, you found peace. If you defied it, you faced chaos. From this cosmic rhythm came the nakshatras, 27 lunar mansions that divided the sky into precise segments. Each nakshatra carried a personality, a ruling deity, and a lesson. The moon's path through these regions wasn't random. It told you when to marry, when to fast, when to plant, and when to speak or stay silent. Jyotisha, or Vedic astrology, wasn't just superstition. It was science, philosophy, and sacred timing. A child's chart of birth could determine their name, their education, their path in life. For kings, it influenced war. For farmers, the monsoon. Indian temples were constructed like cosmic instruments. Many were aligned with solstices and equinoxes. At exact moments, sunlight would enter a narrow opening and strike the heart of the sanctum. It wasn't a mistake. It was a marriage between architecture and astronomy. Indian scholars like Aryabhata calculated the Earth's circumference, the duration of the solar year, and the motion of planets with astonishing precision, all without telescopes. Their texts were read in Baghdad, translated by Arabs, and later studied by Europeans who would build modern astronomy atop their discoveries. In China, the heavens were seen as the emperor's mirror. If the sky was calm, it meant heaven was pleased. If comets or eclipses appeared, it meant the emperor had lost the mandate of heaven. For more than 3,000 years, Chinese astronomers kept records of every major celestial event. Eclipses, meteor showers, sunspots, etched into bamboo, silk, and later paper. China built observatories centuries before Europe. Devices like the armillary sphere helped them track celestial motion. Their star maps divided the sky into 3 enclosures and 28 lunar lodges, similar to India's nakshatras. These weren't just scientific. They were political, imperial. Eclipses were serious business. In ancient times, court astronomers were executed if they failed to predict one. Why? Because an unpredicted eclipse was seen as an insult to heaven, a cosmic protest against poor governance. This text contains drawings of comets, each one labeled with what disaster it might bring. Plague, rebellion, earthquake. A comet wasn't a curiosity. It was a warning. And so, astronomers weren't just scholars. They were guardians of the state. Even the layout of cities and homes followed the stars. Feng Shui, often misunderstood today, was based on geomancy and cosmic alignment. The North Star symbolized stability. The East, renewal. Palaces and tombs were placed in harmony with the cosmos to ensure prosperity and peace. The same culture that built one of the greatest structures on Earth never stopped looking up. And what they found in the sky wasn't randomness. It was logic, pattern, responsibility. In everyday life, the stars shaped decisions, not because of fear, but because of rhythm. The rhythm of the sky was the rhythm of the empire. If heaven's order could be followed, Earth's peace could be maintained. Today, China still celebrates Lunar New Year according to traditional celestial reckoning. In India, major festivals like Diwali, Holi, and Navaratri are still tied to moon cycles, eclipses, and equinoxes. The stars may no longer decide war or kingship, but they still decide celebration, fasting, and reflection. In the East, the stars were not gods to be feared. They were forces to be harmonized with. They represented cosmic law, eternal, silent, and patient. And if a person, a family, or a kingdom aligned with that law, it was said they would prosper. Chapter 7. The Sky as Clock, Compass, and Code. Before humans had watches, compasses, or GPS satellites, they had the sky. To the ancients, the heavens were not just sacred, they were tools. The stars of the original calendar, compass, clock, and code. They told people when to plant, when to move, when to pray, and when to prepare for change. The Polynesians crossed thousands of miles of open ocean using nothing but the stars. They read the sky like a road map. Each island chain had its own star path, a mental chart passed down from navigator to apprentice. No paper, no metal, just memory, intuition, and the fixed positions of stars like Sirius and Canopus. Across Africa, the Tuareg and Berber peoples used the stars to move through the desert. The North Star gave them true north. The arcs of Orion and the Pleiades told them direction and season. With the right knowledge, the sky made every land familiar. On the other side of the world, in Britain, the builders of Stonehenge aligned massive stones with the sunrise of the longest day of the year. It wasn't just ceremony, it was astronomy. These stones marked solstices and equinoxes, turning the year into a measurable loop. Farming became predictable. Celebrations became cyclical. Time became visible. The Nazca people etched massive lines into the desert floor. Some of these align with the solstices and cardinal directions. Some believe they were ceremonial runways for sky gods. Others say they mark calendars and star paths. Either way, they show us one truth. Ancient people organized space and time using the stars. In Mesoamerica, observatories were embedded into cities. El Caracol, the snail-shaped tower, was used by Mayan astronomers to track Venus, the moon, and the equinoxes. From these calculations came their complex calendar systems, which timed everything, from market days to royal coronations. The Chinese used sundials, star charts, and lunar phases to build one of the most sophisticated calendars in the ancient world. Each dynastic period refined it further, because knowing the seasons meant managing the empire. Floods, droughts, taxation, all were predicted through celestial knowledge. In the 9th century, Islamic scholars used astrolabes to measure the altitude of stars and calculate prayer times. They mapped the skies with stunning accuracy. Their celestial charts influenced Europe for centuries. Even the earliest known megaliths in Africa, like Nabta Playa, marked the summer solstice and possibly the rising of Sirius. These were not simple people. They were sky calibrators, cosmic timekeepers. The constellations told farmers what the land could not. In spring, the return of Virgo meant time to plant. In autumn, Orion's rising warned of frost. The sky dictated survival. Even today, millions align their daily lives with the sky. Muslims across the world pray based on the sun's position. Jews begin the Sabbath at sunset. Hindus track festivals with lunar phases. The ancient habits remain. To the Greeks, Orion was a hunter. To the Igbo, he was a warrior. To the Navajo, a protector. To the Maori, a canoe. The stars were universal, but their meanings were cultural. The sky reflected not just nature, but identity. Across continents, people raised stones, planted poles, carved temples, not to worship the sky alone, but to track it. These structures were tools, instruments, star calculators built from wood, earth, and faith. The North Star, Polaris, was the great constant. It helped sailors find their way. It stood still while everything else spun. Many cultures saw it as the center of the world, the nail of the sky, the anchor of time. Today, we barely see the stars through the glow of electric lights, but they're still there, still keeping rhythm, still marking time. Our digital watches may have replaced sundials, Our GPS may guide our cars, but in every satellite and calendar, in every time zone and compass point, echoes the knowledge of ancient star watchers. The sky gave us more than beauty. It gave us direction. It gave us time. It gave us meaning. And though we've changed our tools, we still live by its code. Chapter 8. When the sky went wrong. A sunny day darkens suddenly. Birds fall silent. Animals grow restless. People look up in terror as the sun disappears. An eclipse swallows the sky. The world holds its breath. For most of human history, the sky was a source of order. It gave rhythm, structure, meaning. But what happened when that order broke? What happened when the stars behaved strangely? When the sun vanished? Or the moon turned red? When comets tore across the heavens like flaming arrows? In nearly every civilization, sudden changes in the sky were not seen as natural events. They were warnings, punishments, divine judgments, cosmic imbalances, and those who interpreted them, the shamans, priests, and star watchers, held the burden of explaining the unexplainable. In imperial China, eclipses were deadly serious. If astronomers failed to predict one, they could be executed. The sky was believed to reflect the emperor's virtue. A solar eclipse meant he had lost the mandate of heaven. He had failed his people, and heaven was displeased. Chinese records of eclipses and comets are among the most detailed in the ancient world. They didn't just describe the sky, they judged the ruler by it. One emperor abdicated after an eclipse. Others performed mass rituals to restore harmony. In Babylon, comets and eclipses were omens. The Enuma, Anu, and Lil, a vast collection of star prophecies, outlined what each event meant. If a lunar eclipse occurs on the 14th day, enemies will overrun the land. If Venus is low and red, the king will die. The sky was never silent. It was always speaking, and sometimes it screamed. The Maya were expert astronomers. They predicted eclipses with astounding accuracy, but they also feared them. They believed an eclipse was a cosmic battle between the sun or moon and the forces of the underworld. To let the battle go unwatched would invite disaster. So they fasted, chanted, offered blood. Some even hid indoors, covering mirrors and fires to protect their homes. To the Aztecs, a lunar eclipse meant the moon goddess was being devoured. Pregnant women were warned not to look, or their unborn children might be cursed. Warriors gathered to chant, beat drums, and scare away the monster in the sky. In Norse mythology, eclipses were caused by Skoll and Hati, two wolves chasing the sun and moon. When they caught them, the world trembled. The end of all things, Ragnarok, will be heralded by such celestial chaos. Comets were feared across cultures. Bright, fast, and unpredictable, they didn't fit into the neat cycles of the stars. That made them dangerous. To many, they were weapons of the gods, harbingers of war, plague, or death. The Roman historian Cassius Dio described a comet before the assassination of Julius Caesar. The Chinese blamed a comet for the fall of the Tang dynasty. The Zulu associated them with drought and royal death. In 1066, the comet, now known as Halley's Comet, blazed across Europe. It was seen as an omen. That same year, William the Conqueror invaded England. The Bayeux Tapestry even depicts the comet, proof that the sky's warnings were taken seriously. In sub-Saharan Africa, many cultures saw celestial disruptions as ancestral displeasure. A red moon might mean the ancestors were angry. A shooting star could signify a soul departing or a spirit returning. To correct the imbalance, communities gathered. They sang, they danced, they burned herbs. They reminded the sky that they were listening. The Inca believed eclipses meant the sun was sick. They fasted, wept, and prayed to heal it. Shamans performed cleansing rituals. The people watched silently, believing that if they failed to act, the balance between earth and sky would break. Across cultures, a bad omen could remove a king, postpone a marriage, or end a war. In some cases, entire civilizations shifted based on what they believed the sky was saying. And sometimes the signs were real. In 536 AD, a massive volcanic eruption darkened the sky for over a year. Crops failed. Plague spread. The sun rose weak and pale. People called it the year without sun. Historians now believe it sparked societal collapse from Europe to Asia. The ancient sky watchers may not have known why, but they knew it meant danger. Even into the modern era, strange skies have stirred old fears. The sky is so constant that when it falters, so do we. We are reminded of our smallness. When the sky went wrong, the ancients didn't panic blindly. They acted. They responded. They performed the sacred task of rebalancing the world. And whether those actions worked or not, they believed. They believed they were part of something bigger, something written in light. Chapter 9, The Lasting Mirror. We have come far, from stone circles to space stations, from myth to mathematics, from firelight stories to telescopes peering across galaxies. But through it all, one thing has not changed: our fascination with the stars. They're not just above us. They are within us. They are our oldest mirror. Today, most of us live in cities where the stars are hidden behind artificial light. We don't rise with the sun or farm by the moon. We don't wait for constellations to tell us when to harvest or travel. But the ancient sky lives on in ways we rarely notice. Our calendar itself is born of the heavens. The 365-day year, the 12 months, the leap year, all remnants of Egyptian, Roman, and Babylonian sky watching. Even the 7-day week reflects planetary bodies known to the ancients: the sun, the moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. Time, what we call hours, minutes, and seconds, is based on astronomical motion. One day is a rotation of the Earth. 1 month, the moon's cycle. 1 year, our journey around the sun. Time isn't man-made. It's celestial. Nearly every major festival on Earth, across cultures, religions, and centuries, still revolves around the sun and moon. We fast, feast, marry, mourn, and celebrate according to sky cycles. The ancient rituals continue, disguised in modern clothing. Astrology, once a royal science practiced by priest astronomers, now lives in apps and social media. Millions still check the stars for guidance, not in temples, but on smartphones. We laugh at it, dismiss it, but we still look. Our search has evolved. We now build machines to read the sky. We send telescopes into orbit. We listen for signals across time and space. We ask the same questions, just with newer tools. We still teach our children the stars. We still name things after ancient myths: Apollo, Orion, Artemis. We still map the sky using ancient patterns. The constellations our ancestors imagined are still there, immortalized in science and memory. Modern astronomy hasn't replaced ancient awe. It has deepened it. When we gaze at light that has traveled millions of years, we are still pilgrims, still seekers, still trying to understand our place. No matter where you are, Africa, Asia, Europe, the Americas, Oceania, the stars above you are the same ones seen by your ancestors. They're the one history we all share, the universal archive. The sky is the last common language. In some places, the old ways persist. Elders still pass on sky stories. Rituals are still timed by the stars, not for nostalgia, but for continuity, for identity, for belonging. We're not separate from the stars. The iron in our blood came from supernovae, the calcium in our bones from exploded suns. We are, quite literally, made of stardust. To look at the stars is to look at ourselves backwards in time. We've used the stars to build empires, to launch revolutions, to guide caravans and ships, to count time and tell stories. The sky shaped us, and it still does. A child gazes through a telescope. A grandmother whispers a story about the moon. Perhaps that's why we keep looking up, even when we no longer need to. Because somewhere inside us, there's a memory of fire and fear and wonder, of a time when the sky spoke and we listened. Soft music rises. The stars slowly fade into dawn. We are the descendants of stargazers, the children of night watchers, the builders of temples aimed at infinity. We may no longer worship the stars, but we still follow them, still mirror them, still dream beneath them.